What if I told you there is a show that you have missed that has crime elements as good as Breaking Bad, with comedic situations that rival Curb Your Enthusiasm, and that this is a show currently airing its third season with 20 available episodes and counting, and that each episode packs in a ton of story into their short 30-minute runtime? What if I told you that this show is currently available on FX On Demand or Hulu? Would you watch it? In my opinion, Mr. Inbetween is currently one of the best and most underwatched shows on television. I say underwatched and not underappreciated because it's received plenty of well-deserved critical acclaim. Yet, looking at its popularity, it looks like the Fox marketing department is smothering yet another great show. But it's about a middle-aged hitman, debt collector who is trying to juggle his career and his crumbling, I don't even know if we can call it family life. He's got an ex-wife, he's got an 8-year-old daughter, a girlfriend, and you do see both sides of his life, and that's interesting enough, but the character is incredibly well written. The situations he gets into are well done and kind of unlike anything I've seen in a show like this before. As I said, Season 3 is currently airing on FX Tuesday nights, and then it will be on Hulu the following day. And you can catch up on Season 1 and 2 on Hulu right now as well, or FX On Demand, however you get your FX in. And Season 1, the pilot season, is only 6 episodes long, and at under 30 minutes per episode, that's less than 3 hours to binge watch an incredible new-ish crime series. That's shorter than Zack Snyder's Justice League. I do recommend giving this show 3 full episodes. It takes a little bit of time getting started. However, if you are not hooked on this show by the final frame of the 3rd episode, then maybe it's not for you. However, if you are as hooked as I got on this show by that point, I can tell you the show gets better. Not only does Season 1 get incredibly good as you get to the final episodes, Season 2 manages to top it. And I'll be honest, I have not finished all of the aired episodes. Everything I'm reading about this show says that it continues to get better and better. I love this show so much, I'm doing something I never do. I'm not sure if I've ever done this. I've been watching it by myself, and I've decided to go back. I'm halfway through Season 2. I'm going back, and I'm watching it with my wife. She's loving it. My dad is loving it. My neighbors are loving it. I've mentioned it to channel members twice, both with a post and a video, and I love the show so much, I wanted to do a dedicated video to it. I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but I do want to tell you some of the things about this show that I think are really fantastic, things that I think will help enhance your viewing experience as you go into it. Longtime subscribers know I rarely recommend shows on this channel. This channel is really dedicated to movies. However, I find Mr. Inbetween to be not only so good that I need to talk about it, but it's also really great for movie buffs. At the end of this video, I will tell you about some other fantastic movies similar to this show that are currently available on streaming and where to watch them.
We're looking for a Ray Shoesmith. Does he live here?
I don't answer questions.
Okay, is there somebody here who can answer questions?
I don't answer questions.
So Scott Ryan is not only the star of the show, he's also the writer and creator. And looking on IMDb, he appears to be the only credited writer on this show, which is a hell of a feat. Normally shows like this will have a team of writers. That is a lot of heavy lifting for anybody. Writing, acting, he's on screen in almost every shot, and producing this series. And what really impresses me about this guy as a 36-year-old movie buff is this guy is in his 40s and has no prior experience in show business with one exception.
Okay.
Yep, you want to look there? Or here?
Yeah, no,
There?
camera, like lens.
In 2005, he created a very small movie called The Magician, where he plays the same character. Now, he starred and directed in this movie, and you can currently catch it on Tubi for free. You don't have to have an account to watch it. If you love the show, I do recommend it. However, the movie is very, very raw because it was shot by a film student that he knew, and you can tell when you watch it. However, there's a lot of promise in it, and you can see the early makings of what would later become this fantastic show. If you do end up getting into the show, the magician can make a really interesting prequel situation because it is so raw and it was shot in 2005, so he's much younger. It makes for something really interesting. However, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it by itself for most people watching this video. But my point is that it's incredibly rare to see someone his age with no real experience in show business to suddenly break out with a huge project like this, especially to be starring in it and writing it and essentially having created the whole thing. I find it really impressive and inspiring. So Scott Ryan writes every episode, which I think makes the story much more cohesive and tight, but additionally, Nash Edgerton directs every single episode, which that is also incredibly rare in show business. And if that name sounds familiar, he's actually the brother of actor Joel Edgerton. Now, he only has a handful of directing credits, some of them not so great, but he did one movie in 2008 that I really love and do highly recommend. It's called The Square. It also stars his brother Joel, and it's just a really fantastic thriller from Australia. Again, you can see a lot of the promise. Now, this is one that I do recommend for mass audiences. While it's not currently available on any streaming platforms here in the US, it is available to rent for just a few bucks. So if you get an itch after watching Mr. Inbetween to see more of Nash's work, I highly recommend The Square. And these Edgerton brothers are no strangers to thrillers. His brother Joel directed The Gift in 2015, which I thought was an expertly directed thriller, and then you've got this show. These guys definitely know what they're doing. The consistency in the directing and the writing make the whole thing much more cohesive and intentional, whereas other shows will meander, go in different directions. People have long conversations that don't really service anything, and while that does happen here, it's done in a different way that I think makes it much more entertaining and makes it work much better. And while I'm sure it has happened, the only other show that I can recall having a single solitary writer and a single solitary director is season 1 of True Detective. Still one of the best seasons of television ever made, in my opinion. And just to give you an idea how good the writing is, the show features a lot of long, drawn-out scenes where there's very little dialogue, but you're getting volumes of information on screen. Those tend to be more the crime moments where this guy is out by himself, either doing a hit, trying to defend himself, things like that. So there's these amazing scenes that don't have to explain much to you with dialogue, yet you get these other scenes that are incredibly dialogue heavy.
So, when a man and a woman love each other, right, they have sex, okay? So,
For instance, there's a very long scene where he explains where babies come from to his 8-year-old daughter, and it feels very real. It comes from a real place. As a father myself, I do identify with a lot of those moments, and I found that those scenes of seemingly pedestrian dialogue to be just as engrossing as watching this guy drive someone out to the woods to get rid of them. The title of that episode is I Came From Your Balls.
Wait, so hang on. I came from your balls?
Then the very next episode is titled Monsters, and it's easily the heaviest, darkest episode of the series. But that is what this show is. It's this incredible balance between this dark crime underbelly in Australia and a guy just trying to live his life, raise a daughter, and be a decent human being other than the killing. It's a lot of killing. And as I said, the show is fantastic for movie buffs. There's a scene in season 2 where they're sitting outside someone's house and just spending time, maybe 5 minutes of screen time or more, talking about James Bond, ranking who plays him. It's incredibly entertaining, especially if you love movies as much as I do. But on that note, here are some fantastic Hitman movies currently available on streaming streaming platforms that have a lot in common with Mr. Inbetween. As I said, The Magician is currently available on Tubi. This was written and directed by Scott Ryan, his only other credit on IMDb. While the production is ultimately nowhere near as good as Mr. Inbetween, this is more of a homegrown kind of film project thing. If you end up loving the show, it'll be well worth going and checking it out. The ICEMAN is also on Tubi. This stars Michael Shannon and is a true story of a real hitman. It sort of spans the 70s and 80s. And two, you see him juggling his family life. He plays a very different character from the one in Mr. Inbetween, but there's a lot of commonality there, and this is a very good Michael Shannon movie as well. Also on Tubi from South Korea, A Company Man is a fantastic hitman thriller that has a lot in common with Mr. Inbetween except for the comedy. There's very little levity to this movie. It is pretty heavy, but it does feature a little girl as well. Not totally in line with Mr. Inbetween, but a fantastic crime thriller from South Korea that has a fair amount of action in it as well. It's hard to go wrong with Leon the Professional, and it's hard to deny that this movie likely influenced Mr. Inbetween and a lot of other things like it. It's one of the best in the genre, and you can currently catch it on Starz. It features one of the best villains Gary Oldman has ever done, and also has that great balance between action and violence and tender moments with the young Natalie Portman character, however inappropriate that relationship may or may not have been. Road to Perdition is currently on Netflix. This is directed by Sam Mendes, who did American Beauty, Jarhead, and Skyfall. I find this to be an incredibly beautiful period piece. Tom Hanks also plays a hitman debt collector type who has a son and ended up being one of Paul Newman's final movies, if not his last. He may have died before this one was actually released. It's a beautiful gangster movie. The period it takes place in is great. Jude Law plays an incredibly slimy villain in it. If you've never seen it, it is among the better movies currently available on Netflix. Confessions of a Dangerous Mind is one of my favorite hidden gems of all time to recommend. It's currently available with HBO or HBO Max. In this movie, Sam Rockwell plays Chuck Barris, who is a real guy who created a bunch of game shows like The Dating Game and The Gong Show, and his memoirs detailed the fact that he was an international assassin, which may or may not be true, but this movie supposes that it is, and it is a lot of fun, and it also has an incredible balance between heavy elements and comedy, even though this one does swing more in the direction of comedy. Incidentally, this is also George Clooney's first time in the directing chair for a feature film, and I think it's easily his best movie. It's one of Sam Rockwell's best performances. If you've never seen it, it is a top tier Darren Van Dam recommendation. And then finally, the original Charles Bronson, The Mechanic, is included with Prime Video right now. This movie probably has the most in common with Mr. Inbetween, in my opinion. Not much levity to it, but in terms of the type of character and the type of guy Charles Bronson is playing, I find Scott Ryan's character to be so reminiscent of Charles Bronson and things like that, which is one of the things I love most about the show. It's so well developed, and it gives me an itch to watch movies like The Mechanic. If you've never seen it, it is a 70s hitman masterpiece. Check it out. Let me know in the comments below what you look forward to watching the most, and if you have watched Mr. Inbetween, let me know what you think about it in the comments. I will read them. Help me thank the Patreon supporters for supporting yet another sort of offbeat episode. I normally don't do things like this, but having support allows me to do whatever I want. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, there's a link in the description. There's also a link down there where you can become a channel member right here on YouTube and get access to exclusive videos. But I will keep making recommendation videos like this as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this special Mr. Inbetween episode, and you will see me on the next one.